Hey, this is Paul Solt from Super Easy Apps. We're going to get started with trying to get the keyboard to disappear when we press the return key. So right now we press it, nothing happens. We're going to learn how to do that. In order to get started with that, we need to customize the behavior of a UI text field. And to do that, what we use is called a delegate. Now, delegation is how you can have someone else do another task for you. The same is true with our UI components. We can customize and tweak the behaviors of how the standard UI components that Apple provides, like the button, the labels, the text fields, all of these things interact with the user as well as how they respond to user input. And we do that using a delegate protocol. So we need to set the text field, the build text field's delegate, to be our current code file. And we use the self keyword. So let's go ahead and do that. Build text field dot delegate. This is a UI text field delegate, so I can press enter to autocomplete equals self. Now what we're saying is that this code file is going to conform and implement the methods. Now we're going to get a build failure here because we are not stating that we are going to support these methods yet. And we don't even know what these methods are, but I'm going to show you. So let's fix this one error, and then we can dive into the documentation and learn more about this. So at the very top where you see class view controller, you're going to type comma and UI text field delegate. And at any point during this video, just pause and try and catch up if things are not working. Retype the code. There's a lot of potential mistakes if you misspell field or anything like that. It's not going to work. So just double check to make sure that you're following along correctly. Once we have that, we can use quick help to pull this open. Now you're going to hold the Alt or the Option key and you're going to hover over this. You should see a question mark. If you don't see a question mark, make sure you're hitting the right key in order to get that to appear. So if we click that, we see this nice description. This is actually super useful, but it's a little hard to read in the quick help because it is so long. So we're going to open up the protocol reference. And if you just click on protocol reference, it should appear. Now, there is a bug here in the current version of Xcode where it doesn't actually take us to where we clicked last. It seems to open the last thing that I was looking at. And so we'll try that one more time. So if we come over here and we click off and then we hold the Alt or the Option key, we click back on, scroll down, we can go to the protocol reference for the UI text field delegate. And we should see that same text that we saw that was in the quick help, but now it's on a full screen that's a little bit easier to read. What you need to do right now is you have to pause this video and you have to read this. Take some time. This is going to give you an overview of the concepts, which is really important to understand sort of the behaviors. Now, there's a lot going on here. Don't worry if you don't understand everything right now. There's only a couple parts that we really care about, but I want you to become familiar with reading documentation. So read this top overview. It's very helpful for understanding the process. Then read these functions and press play when you're done. Awesome. So you took some time to read over this. The key takeaways are that we have these different ways of overriding some default behavior. And out of the box, there's really no default behaviors because Apple doesn't know how you want to use different things. And so that's why we write code. We write code to implement the behaviors that we want. And there is a couple that we care about, and they're in this editing text fields. And the first one that's going to help us with our current problem of this return button not working is should the text field return. And for this one, we want to return true to get the default behavior, and we can click on this for more information. So let's look at text field should return. Pause the video and read over this description. Awesome. Took some time. It's really important. Otherwise, you're going to be like totally clueless. So it really helps to read the documentation, and I will call out when I think it's really important. This is going to give us some clues for getting the keyboard to disappear. And so we're going to jump over to code and try and implement these. What a delegate protocol is just a way of communicating. And it's much like a protocol you might have when you're interacting with people. When you meet someone for the first time, in America, the protocol is you shake their hand and you introduce yourself. You sometimes say where you're from. It's just how we introduce people. And in other countries, you're going to use a different protocol. With the text field, it's got a certain way of behaving, and we can customize the behavior. So we can control how it behaves and how it responds to user input by using these delegate protocol methods. Let's jump back to code. We're now saying we're conforming, but we're not actually implementing any of these methods. We're not required to implement all of these methods because they are by default optional. And we can see that if we hold the command key and we click off of this and then we click back on, if we jump to definition, what we can look at is the actual code that describes how this is set up. And in here, we can see some other tips and things from Apple. Now, some of these comments are based on Objective-C. So where you say no and yes, these are Boolean values and they are true and false. So no means false and true means yes. So that's one sort of difference between Objective-C and Swift. And these two languages are kind of intertwined, but Swift is getting further and further apart. However, since we're working with Cocoa Touch, the things are very still much related. We can see in here that these are optional methods, so you don't have to do anything. If you don't do anything, you get the default behavior. Okay, so if we jump back, now what we want to do is we want to implement some of these UITextFieldDelegates. So at the very bottom on line 32, I'm going to add a comment for UITextFieldDelegate methods. And down here, we're just going to organize some of the code for this. So what I want to do is show you a quick tip on entering these without having to memorize them. What you do is you start typing the name of the UI control, and we start typing without the UI in front. So we just start typing text field. And when we start that, the protocol is sort of designed so that we can find all of the methods that conform to it based on this. And so you'll notice how these all start with text fields, so they're super easy to find. We're looking for the should return method. So you should see this in your list. You can press enter or you can double click it to insert that code. It auto generates all of the code so that you don't manually have to type it. This is where it can be a little error prone. If you were to mistype this, you wouldn't get the expected behavior. Okay, so now that that's in there, we can get rid of that boilerplate code thing just by deleting it. And the default behavior is we have to return a value, and that's a Boolean value, and we just need to say return true. Don't worry too much. I know this is probably your first time coding. I just want you to follow along. Type everything that you see. You're going to learn by doing when you follow this lesson tutorial. I'm not going to explain everything. I'm not going to teach you the basics to get started because I think it's more important to understand a problem and then learn how to fix that problem, and then understand another problem and learn how to fix that problem. So we're going to jump through code in this fashion. All right, so now that we have that, we don't have any build errors, but it's still not going to do what we expect. We can go ahead, we can build, we can run it. It's not going to get the keyboard to disappear. So that's just a first step. So we click on this, we press return, the keyboard still doesn't disappear. So returning true or false, you're not going to see a difference in behavior, but it will change the way some of the logic on the iPhone is going to behave in relation to this function. And for the most part, you always want to return true for this method. And we'll just keep it at that for now. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is we need to tell that text field that we can't see. So if I run this again, we can see it. So we've got this text field. We need to tell this text field right here to give up focus. And that means, okay, I don't want to interact with you anymore. I don't want the keyboard to be associated with you. Relinquish control of the keyboard so that we can go back to not having the keyboard open. And so to do that, we need to call out this particular text field directly. And we say build text field dot, and then it's resign first responder. So this is a particular method. This is going to invoke this action that's going to remove focus so that the keyboard can go away. And let's try and run it and see what happens. All right. So if we click on here, we can press return and we see that the keyboard goes away. And as a sanity check, sometimes when you're playing around with these, it's helpful to add print statements. So you can pause the video, you can type this in to follow along. I'm going to play it again. We should see return is pressed when we click the return button. And we're going to see that the keyboard disappears. So you can play around, see how things are going to work. So that's how to hide the keyboard. And the other thing that we want to do is the calculate tip button should also hide the keyboard, but we can't see the calculate tip button. So that's kind of a problem as well. But let's fix that problem. We're going to reuse code. And this is one of those concepts that we want to get in the habit of doing. So all we're going to do is we're going to define a new method. So just type what you see here. I'll call it hide keyboard. And we're just going to copy this logic and we're going to insert it up top. So we can just cut it and we'll paste it here. And then down here, we'll call this method hide keyboard. Now, Xcode does have some new refactoring tools that can make this easier. For now, I just want to give you practice doing it yourself. And it is probably better, instead of cutting and pasting, to actually rewrite it and cleaning it up yourself, because that's going to get you into the habit of writing code and making sure that you're typing things correctly. So if we run this again, it should have the same behavior. It should hide the keyboard, except now we have a method. We have a chunk of code that we can use anywhere in our program that will do the desired behavior. So if we click here, we can hit return, and we see that the keyboard disappears. We can't actually click on this button since it's masked by the keyboard. So it's going to be a little hard to test in this video tutorial, but in the next lesson, I'm going to show you how to move the screen up so that we can verify this change is going to fix the problem. All right, so that's our hide keyboard. We're reusing that method here. The other place that we need to insert that is after we calculate the tip. So let's do that up top. So there's 2 points where the user can get this type of behavior. We just add hide keyboard here and here, and we're reusing common logic. Now, if there was additional things that we wanted to do in this method, that's where the benefit of extracting functionality and wrapping it into a chunk of code that we can call somewhere else is really helpful. And this helps down the road when you need to make changes or update your application. All right, so that's it for this lesson. In the next lesson, we're going to get into getting that screen to go upwards so that we can actually see our calculate tip button, and we're going to have to move some things around. Let's see how that works. Hey, this is Paul. Real quick before you go, I've got all the source code over here on the right. If you want to download the source code, go to the link that's over on the right or down below. You can grab that code. If you like that, click the like button. Also, before you go, once you go to this site, you'll see a little form. If you fill that out, type your email address in here and click the download now button. That's going to send you an email with all the source code. So just check your email in order to get started. All right, so this has got a lot of design resources from Sketch to PNGs to Xcode projects. Is going to be very useful. Lastly, click the subscribe button, which is over my head, if you want to get updates when I have new videos. I'm going to be posting regular content on a weekly basis. And then last but not least, just like this video if you found any of the topics that I talked about helpful. I'm going to be showing you the next step in the next video. So let's go do that.